So again, Dalio, so when he talks about that, he's really talking long term. If anything, if you line up his cash is trash comments with market activity, they tend to be almost counter-cyclical. So, for example, he said cash is trash in like February 2020, which was like right before like one of the most rapid crashes we've ever seen in risk assets, where cash would have been the best performing thing for the next quarter. And so you can have these periods where for a couple of quarters or a couple of years where cash is one of the better investments, right? So just because cash loses 5, 6, 7, 8% a year, you can have markets go down 10, 20, 30, 40% in a given year, compared to, depending on what market you're looking at. And so I think it's one of those things that depends on your risk tolerance and time frame. I think cash is going to be a very poor investment throughout the 2020s. I think the rates are going to stay persistently below the inflation rate for the majority of that decade. But there will be years where cash is probably towards the top of the pile in terms of investment performance, because you can have down years in equity markets and things like that. I don't know for sure if 2022 is going to be one of those, but I do think that 2022 is likely to be choppier and worse performing than the prior 2 years. Let's say for the S&P 500 and some of these other well-performing indices. I think that's where there's risk. I think with the fiscal pulling back and tightening monetary conditions, having some cash can make sense. In addition, it's important to know that Berkshire Hathaway, his company, is primarily an insurance company. It's a conglomerate. They're in multiple businesses, but at the heart of it is they have some of the largest insurance operations in the world. And so if you look at most insurance balance sheets, they're almost entirely in bonds. So he has a more kind of higher volatility, riskier portfolio than the average insurance company. He's very equity overweight for his industry, which is, I think, an important caveat to keep in mind. He's not necessarily, like, his personal portfolio might not be 30% cash. It's different when you're running an insurance company. So he's rather, balanced, I say, overall. Now, he certainly could deploy capital, but I think his challenge is he's having trouble with some of the valuations out there. For most of those 10 years, the problem was gold got so overvalued in 2011, 2012, compared to the broad money supply, compared to all sorts of things, that it went through a natural bear market. So it's one of those things, if you start the clock at, say, year 2000, gold outperformed the S&P 500 since then. But if you start the clock at 2011, 2012, during the peak of the bubble that was in, it's been a terrible performer. And so it really depends on time frames. Now, if we zoom in on what happened in 2021, I think the big thing that likely impacted gold was the rise of Bitcoin and some of the other cryptos, because a lot of the money that would have otherwise flown into gold, basically people that want sound money, right? So Bitcoin's got that big Austrian economist sound money community. A lot of that capital, if Bitcoin never existed, it would have flowed into gold. And before, Bitcoin was small enough that it didn't really interfere with gold. But now that Bitcoin reached roughly $1 trillion market cap, if you look at gold's market cap, it's often cited around 12 trillion. But if you just isolate the private investment portion of it, so you take out central bank gold, and then you take out jewelry gold and industrial gold, things like that, even though jewelry has a monetary component, especially in places like India, but let's say you factor that out. You look at actual just private investment gold bars, gold coins, gold ETFs, things like that, that's maybe 4 or 5 trillion. And so when you have the Bitcoin market getting up to $1 trillion and the broad crypto market getting up to 2 or 3 trillion, that starts to rival gold's market cap. So I would say basically gold ran into competition, and basically, the overall pie went up quite a bit, and just that gold's percentage of that pie shrunk. And so gold kind of just chopped along sideways for a year, where you'd otherwise expect that to do pretty well. So I think different investors obviously have very different areas of expertise, very different risk tolerances. I tend to be equity heavy. The equity market tends to be where I feel most comfortable, that I've done the most research, that I like having a lot of my capital in. So I tend to always be equity heavy, and it really comes down to what areas of the equity market I think are attractive. And so, for example, in the past, say, few months, we've had the healthcare sector not performing very well, and partly because there was impending legislation in the United States that could push down drug prices. So that obviously affects American drug makers, but also, a lot of the European and other large drug manufacturers, United States is their big lucrative market, because we pay more for the same drug than most other countries, kind of just how we've structured things. And so, if that were to passed, especially some of the more, so there's like a spectrum. Some of them are really kind of, sweeping changes. But of course, the ones that can actually possibly get through the Senate are watered down. And so as that's kind of gone through, it's become increasingly clear that if something gets through, it's not going to be transformative.
Before we continue, help us clicking that YouTube like button and subscribe now to our channel. This shows the algorithm that you valued this information. And it helps us spread that message. Sharing is caring. And now, let's continue.
I have bad news for you. If you're not rich by now, you're screwed. And if you're in debt, you're even double screwed. How so, you might wonder? Well, the sad truth is that you're working your whole life to make someone else rich. The mega corporations, the banks, the politicians, everyone is getting richer. They get your money. And what is even worse, they get your time, they get your life. You are not even in a rat race, you're in a financial prison. But what could a solution for you look like? Honestly, I don't know, but I know what a solution for me would look like. It's very simple. I use whatever money I have and I multiply it with 1,000. This could make my life much easier and probably yours as well. If you have $1,000 available and multiply this with 1,000, I believe that this could solve some financial issue for the one or the other. Of course, if you're ugly, you would have to multiply it with much more than 1,000. My name is Markus Dahn, and this is what I decided to do. I decided to 1000x my money. This is not a joke. I know what you may be thinking. What is this guy talking about? How should this work? This is not possible. Well, I made a detailed video where I laid out my plan. And some clever folks might even want to look at this plan and copy it and do exactly what I do. This is just a little hint on the side. You have two options. You leave, you forget what you have seen. You do whatever you're doing and you hope that somehow you get some other results. Good luck with that. Or you click the link below the video. You enter your email address because I'm not showing this to everybody. You at least watch my video on how I plan to 1000x my money. The choice is yours. Make the right choice. Join me. See what a different future you could have. See at least how I plan to do the 1000x. So click on the link below, enter your email address, and I see you on the other side. Your Markus Dahn.